we have two major projects, one being the first Lego League, which is basically building Lego robots to go and interact with various models and so forth. And the other one we do is a thing called Young Eco Engineers, which is an electric go-kart project. Interspersed amongst all of that, we will talk on a variety of subjects that interest us as the ambassadors, or interest them as in the children. I've got a few little odds and sods from my experiences of doing that, but just to sort of give you a sort of little flavour of what we might do with the children. We have them for an hour and a half after school on a Tuesday. We, in that hour and a half, usually have enough time to cover a small activity in detail, or if we're doing these major projects, we'll advance them a certain number of steps along the process, along the way as we go. We are able to take 10 children a year because of the limitations of the two competitions we take part in. So to get the children involved, I tend to go into the school towards the end of the summer term and talk to children in the years 4 and 5, so the children who are about to become 5 and 6 and eligible. I'll try and sell the club to them, explain what we do, and I'll try and get them infused in the ideas of science and STEM and so forth. I don't know if people can see my webcam particularly well, but this is a wonderful book. It's called Science Lab, and it's by Robert Winston, and it contains a number of little experiments that you can usually do without too much additional equipment, and they're quite useful things to try and talk to children about, because I tend to find that if you can give them something that they can actually do and explore, you get a lot more out of them. I do have, with my demonstration hat on, hopefully a platform that you can now see. And this is the experiment, or the piece of equipment I took in to explain to the children about Science Club this year. It consists of 2 lollipop sticks.
Wait a minute, I'm gonna get rid of my slide here so people can see you a bit better. I think that would be a good idea.
I shall start again.
I think that makes you're going widescreen, hopefully.
Well, hey, I've got 2 popsicle sticks, or lollipop sticks.
Sorry, no, just bear with me. Wait a minute. Is that all right? Can everyone see okay?
Yeah, it's coming through really nicely, Miriam. So Joe is in glorious Technicolor.
2 elastic bands, any colour, but I happen to have purple here, and a piece of paper. And I am now going to attempt what I should never ever do, which is a live demonstration. Essentially, what we're making here is an ability to make an unusual and strange sound. And one of the joys of making unusual and strange sounds is that children love them. They spend a lot of time trying to make them. And all we're doing is making a fairly simple device that will allow this piece of paper to vibrate. So I am fitting the piece of paper in between the lollipop sticks. I'm then wrapping the end of that around with the elastic band. And I've got the piece of string in on that one end there, just to provide a little bit of a gap between them. And I then repeat the process at the other end. Hopefully this is all still nice and visible, because this is again the sort of madcap thing I try and do every so often to the children, just to sort of show a few bits and pieces that I happen to find either amusing, interesting, or scientifically fun. That's literally it. And then again, if I've done this right, you can make a rather entertainingly silly noise. What's quite useful about that is, firstly, it's something all the children are able to do. It's also something that the children have to take home afterwards. It's ridiculously cheap to make these things, providing you have a source of popsicle sticks, and you can usually ask the children to instruct their parents to buy them an ice cream or something along those lines, bring them in themselves. So you can make this very, very cheaply, very, very easily, but you can also then explore it by varying the thickness of the paper, varying the length apart of the two strings. You can turn it into an experiment that the children can take part in. Other things that we found reasonably successful, and again, sticking my demonstration shelf back up, is when things like this happen. As an adult, this was a real pain because my pump in my central heating system broke. And so I had to get the engineers in to come and fix it for me. But having something like this is an unusual toy. children don't see them very often. Frankly, adults don't see them very often either. And so bringing in small demonstration items that they can hold, they can feel, they can look at, and then you can explain how they work, again, can be very effective ways of getting the children engaged in what they're doing. Whilst most of my experience tends to be trying to simplify the science down to a primary level, it works, I find, very well when I was attending a thing called the Big Bang Fair down in Canterbury, where I was being a STEM ambassador at that point and was supervising a high school group as they were travelling around. I believe they were in year 9 or 10, so it would have been about 13, 14, 15, somewhere in that kind of an age range. And again, the demonstrations that worked the best were the ones where there was hands-on, there was physical contact, there was things to play with. And as a result of that, I found one of these, which is an interesting, quirky little device, which contains some lights and a speaker and these 2 strips of aluminium tape. And it's a wonderful one for teaching electrical circuitry and the fact that current will pass through people. At the moment, in COVID times, it's not particularly easy. You have to sort of demonstrate it on your own. But hopefully you can hear that going and see it making the sort of flashing lights and so forth. And again, having some of these little bits and pieces can be quite useful. One of the main reasons I contacted Miriam for this particular both session and concept generally is that the thing I struggle mostly with is finding some of these small scale little experiments that you can do which don't require very much kit but focus in on sort of refrigeration. So I would be very keen to hear from anybody who has any ideas on presenting those kind of experiments, or even just has those kind of experiments that we might be able to push forward with, bearing in mind the time limitations you've got, and equally the fact you're in a school, some of the equipment limitations you might have. I found this one a bit of a struggle. But what I have found through my experiences is a way of presenting information across. If you've got an experiment but you have no idea how to sell it to a child or sell it to school, I may be able to assist you with that because it's something I've been doing and generating for a while. And to just sort of close that sort of subject off with my final sort of comment, I'm a tunnel ventilation engineer, and most of my job involves managing safety with regards to fire emergencies. So looking at ways to move the smoke backwards and forwards, up and down the tunnel to protect the life of the people who may be trapped there at the time. I really wanted to try and find a way of demonstrating what I do to the school. I've come up with a way that allowed my school to enable me basically to set a fire in the middle of their playground. To do that, there are a number of risk assessment steps that you have to go through. You have to consider not only the risks to you as the demonstrator, but the risks that you may be inadvertently introducing to the school and so forth. And I needed to talk this through with the headmaster. I talked it through with I can't quite off the top of my head remember the name of the organisation, but they'd contracted a group to sort of provide scientific advice to the school, and again talk through that. But my sort of proud boast would therefore be if I found a way of setting fire to something in a school setting that they were then very happy for me to do, very pleased that there was the science behind it to explain and demonstrate these things and so forth. I hope whatever experimental design you've got would be slightly less dangerous, and therefore one that I can hopefully help you with getting across to the children. And I can honestly say that when you watch some children set fire to something themselves and then toast a marshmallow or so on it, you know that you found a way of making them very happy. So if you can give them an experiment where they can get involved in, it can be a very rewarding experience. I'm in my 6th year now of running the club, and not showing any signs of stopping just yet. Thank you very much for listening. Does anyone have any questions at all for what I've been through there?
Thanks, Joe. That's very very typical you of trying to set fire to the school when you just to prove a point. Very good. And I don't know what Steve's going to think about that, because he's our next speaker as a school governor, so he may have some views. But actually, you reminded me as well of I remember at one of the Institute dinners having a chat to one of our student prize winners, and and we were actually, John Austin Davis is on the call. He was also on that, and we were talking about Hoovers. And it turned out that all these people had about 4 or 5 Hoovers in their house, because what happened is when they broke, they kept them because they like to take them apart and see how they work and put them together. And So there's that engineering mind. So I like what you said about taking, you know, a broken part from a heating system, and it makes you realize we throw these things away, but they might be good learning tools. You know, we don't have to spend a fortune on creating science experiments. Why not just take stuff from the home? And okay, it may not be refrigeration, but it's a compressor or something. I mean, hey, it's kind of works, right?
It's what's so lovely about this book is that it does contain a whole host of experiments, of which this was one from it, that allow you to demonstrate a range of scientific principles, and it gives you ways that you can do it cheaply. The engineer in us will always find a way to make it more impressive and expensive, but you can find ways of doing it cheaply enough that you've got something that you can demonstrate away and have the children involved with.
Yeah, I mean, I remember we did some school things way back a long time ago to do with the skill fridge, and they would do. I mean, that was a bit complex, but they had stuff like some flow ice, you know, and they had a bucket of flow ice, and that the kids were making snowballs out of that in the summer. So there's all sorts of, you know, about using what you've got there, or people who are in manufacturing who might have sort of rejects or cut through compressors and stuff like that. So it's lots of good ideas. So thank you for that. Okay, so and also we've got a couple of people who've been on this amazing training program where they did give them some experiments. So yeah, so Sam has been on that course, and she was saying that they have been doing experiments over Zoom with the kids, because while they couldn't go in, like you, doing the visual experiments and using stuff from around the home. And they did had some suggestions there. They were about 45-minute long exercises. And then I guess they just explained, they did 6 different experiments and explained some of the science behind it. So it's the same as what you're saying, really, and that's a good reference. I've made a note of that book, so we'll put that up on our tools. So excellent, good. So if anybody else again has done anything that they found worked really well, pop those in the